Okay, so if we go back to this idea of timbre, shape, and motion, and we actually look at a synthesizer, there is kind of a tool in just about all synthesizers to do those three things. One tool for each thing. So we're speaking kind of broadly here about almost all synthesizers, and they almost all work this way. Okay, now all of them are unique, so there are extra little things in each one of them that make them unique. But if you look at any synthesizer that you've never touched before, um, and you remember this general rule of thumb, you'll be able to make some sound with it pretty fast. Okay, so here is the general rule of thumb. Every synthesizer is made of three things and kind of a fourth. The three things are oscillators, filters, an amplifier, and the kind of fourth is envelopes. Okay, so let's look at our analog synthesizer here in live. Well, let's simplify it and just look at this top bit right here. Okay, the bottom part is the same thing again. Okay, and there's some other stuff in here, but let's not worry about that for now. So if we just look at this top part, what we have here in this first rectangle is, it says OSC1, that's oscillator 1. Okay, so that's our oscillator. The oscillator of a synthesizer is the thing that makes sound. It's actually the only thing that makes sound in most cases. So the oscillator is usually, in simple synthesis, it's just a circuit in old analog synthesizers that oscillated, just went back and forth, and that made a waveform. It went wow, 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 but it did that really, really fast, and that makes a pitch. Okay? So oscillators can be a certain shape, and that changes the pitch, or that changes the timbre. They can be in tune or out of tune. And these shapes that they are can get more and more complicated. In this one, we just have 4 shapes that it can do. But in something like a sampler, the oscillator is the thing that makes sound. So in a sampler, that's the thing that's playing the sample, right? Everything else in a sampler is pretty much the same as what I'm about to say. So the oscillator in any synthesizer is the thing that makes sound. And there's some adjustments you can do with that. A lot of adjustments you can do with that. Okay, the second thing is the filter. Filter is here. It says fill 1, filter 1. So the filter is what shapes the timbre of the sound even more. So in this kind of a synthesizer, what we have is a filter that's going to pull away sound. It's going to filter some frequencies out. So this is subtractive synthesis that we're looking at here. So this is going to generate a very rich waveform, something with a lot of buzziness to it. And then this is going to, we're going to say, okay, go to 1.6K and start pulling some frequencies out around there or something like that. So the filter is going to chip away at our sound a little bit. All synthesizers have a filter in them, and they are a very important role. Okay, the third thing is the amplifier. The amplifier is going to give our sound shape. Okay, with the amplifier, we can say not only is this sound loud or quiet, but how does it get loud and how does it get quiet? What is the shape of it, right? So that really kind of figures out the shape element. The timbre element is really built in these two things. It's the oscillator and the filter that determines the timbre of the sound. The the amplifier determines the shape of the sound. And then every synthesizer then has a bunch of extra things that do some different kinds of modulation to the sound. An LFO is probably one of the most common. Not all synthesizers have an LFO, but I would venture to say 99% of them do. And an LFO, which we'll talk about how that works later, that's going to change the motion of our sound. So I would put this in kind of a a category of not one of the main three things, but something that we just call modulators that affect the motion of the sound. Okay, so I haven't talked about our fourth thing yet, envelopes, right? So let me review. I'm jumping around a little bit here. So oscillators and filters, those are responsible for the timbre of the sound. Amplifier, that's responsible for the motion of the sound. LFOs and other modulation things that are unique to each synthesizer is responsible for the motion of the sound. Amplifier is responsible for the shape of the sound, if I said that wrong. Now, the kind of third thing I said is an envelope. Envelopes are just kind of all over the place in synthesizers. If I click on amp, this is an envelope. It lets us change a parameter kind of over time. So this, in this case, is adjusting the way that the amplifier opens and closes. That's going to change the shape of the sound. If I click on filter, this is an envelope, and it's going to change the way the filter opens and closes over time. Right? So envelopes are a concept that you'll see all over synthesizers. We'll spend some time on how they work later. Most important thing for you to remember, though, is that any synthesizer, if you want to make sound, first, find the oscillators. Dial in something that you like. Second, find the filters. Set those how you want. Third, find the envelope, or find the amplifier. Dial that in how you want. Then you're making music. If you want to get fancier, find envelopes for each of those parameters and start playing around.